Berks County, I'm Patti Pugliese Rentschler, and welcome back to Work at Wellness, Wellness at Work. We've been away for a little while, and this is the beginning of our 2006 season. This year we are taking a whole new approach to life here at BCTV and our program. We are going to be exploring and featuring some of the people in our community who have begun remarkable and fascinating and exciting new projects after the age of retirement. I'm turning 50 myself this year, and I have a whole new respect for people who are over 50. So we're going to start featuring some of the ones in our community and talk really about what your possibilities are and maybe inspire you to look inside yourself for something that you may have to contribute to. Tonight is a very special program because we're going to be talking about a couple things that are very near and dear to me, and one of them is family, and the other one is my life as a citizen of the United States. And there's one more thing I love, and that is books, and tonight's program contains all three. I'm joined tonight by two very, very special people, and I'm going to introduce you to them now. To my immediate right is Mark W. Pugliese, Jr., and he is accompanied, there's Mark, welcome, I'm so glad to see you.
Good evening.
And also with him is Kenneth I. Dunlap. Kenny, welcome.
Hi.
It's so good to have you here.
Thanks.
It's a special team of gentlemen, and I'm going to ask you about a project that you just completed. Mark and Kenny have just completed publishing a book. The book is called Exchange of Warriors. It is a first-time book for both of them, and it is a very, very special story. Why don't you tell us how this came about? This is predominantly your story, and I will tell you that Mark is the grandfather of Ken. Interesting collaboration. How did this start? How did this happen?
It started way back in about 1945 when I was serving in Italy in World War II. And I was in combat in the foxhole, and I often thought about my granduncle, who was a Civil War veteran. And I thought what he would think being here and what I would think being in the Civil War.
So we have it's a war theme. It's a story about two soldiers.
That's right.
It's interesting because we're in a time, as you know, now you're from a military family. All of the boys went to war. I wanted to talk with both of you tonight because we're in a particularly interesting time. We are a country at war now, a different kind of war. And I think that a lot of our people, the young people particularly, don't know anything. We're talking about the Korean War now.
Yes.
And you are a Korean War soldier.
Yes.
And you're talking about a character, just to sort of set this up a little bit. This is a story about two wars, about the Korean War and the Civil War. And the Korean War soldier and a Civil War soldier both get injured in battle and wake up in each other's lives. The Civil War soldier wakes up in a Japanese hospital in the middle of the Korean War. The soldier that's fighting in the Korean War wakes up in the 1860s and is a Civil War soldier, and without provocation, these guys go back and forth over time, so we've got a little bit of a time travel theme.
Yes, I do.
Okay, but now you are a war historian of sorts, are you not? As well as being a soldier.
Yeah, I studied the Civil War for ever since I was about 14. I've been reading, and especially about the Battle of Gettysburg. But it all stems from my granduncle, who I lived with, and he died in 1940. He was 99 years old, and I was 12. And one of my jobs was to watch him because he was a pretty old man. And he used to talk to me about the Civil War. And things that I remembered, I put in this book. I couldn't remember everything he told me, but a lot of it is in this book. What happened to him, and the other part on the Korean soldier is what happened to me.
So this is autobiographical in a sense.
Yeah, in some sense it is, but it's also fiction. I mean,
and boy, you can't get confused on Oprah about that.
Yeah, we can't very well time travel, all right.
But there's an interesting element about that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to bring Kenny into the discussion. Now, this you've never written a book before yourself, have you?
No.
How did you get pulled into this process by your grandfather?
Well, it kind of started on a road trip. We were coming back from my mom's house in Ohio, and my grandfather said, you know, on the way home, I had this idea about a book I wanted to write, and he wanted to base it on his great uncle Tom and also on himself, and they switch places. And when he told me the idea, I thought it was great. It had all the action, thrills, you know. You have war, you have history, you have fantasy, you have science fiction, all involved in the story, which I think makes for a great book. But what really attracted me to doing this with my grandfather is that, like he said, he had the opportunity to listen to his great uncle talk about his time during the Civil War, and which to me is pretty amazing, because there's not too many people out there who actually know a Civil War veteran and are still alive to tell about it. So to hear those stories is a great opportunity for me, but also to have the opportunity to hear his story too, and get to spend that time with my grandpa and just kind of get to listen to his, you know, some of the things that happened to him when he was in Korea.
It's a rare privilege for him to have known a Civil War soldier. There were not, I guess even at that time there weren't that many.
No, when he died in 1940, he was the second to last Delawarean soldier to expire. He was a grand old man.
Remarkable. The themes in this book are very timeless. You have family. I mean, boys have been marching off to war forever. Now, tell me a little bit about this. Now, the story itself develops because both of them get injured. Now, the other element about this is the camaraderie of men at war, the soldiers, and tell us a little bit about that relationship. And there's a character in here named Millette that you talk about. Tell us a little bit about your Korean War experience and what parts of that you brought into this book. We'll set up a little bit of introduce the characters a little bit.
Well, Millette was my best friend in the Korean War.
Met him in the war?
Yeah, we met.
Didn't go there together?
We met. He came in as a replacement, and I had already been in the company, and came in my squad, and we just hit it off. You know, I mean, he was just a great guy.
How old were you?
At that time, I was only 23 years old. Millette was 19. I was already, as a soldier, I was already an old man. Matter of fact, they used to call me a retread because I came from World War II. And I had joined the reserves. That's how I got to Korea. But he was a great guy. Unfortunately, he died in 1988.
Did you see each other after the war?
Yeah, he visited me. He originally came from Bedford, Massachusetts, but he had married a girl in Camden, New Jersey. And after I was wounded, and he came up to see me about a year later. And of course, we had a grand time. And unfortunately, I never seen him again. He went to Bedford, Massachusetts, and there he actually died from respiratory disease that he had contacted while he was working. So I never got a chance to see him after that.
Those there's some imagery in this book. There is let's talk about the girls. There's a love story. There's always a girl. Every soldier is always marching off to war with a picture of somebody in his heart. Tell us a little bit about that. There are a lot of young brides right now, young wives right now, that are experiencing their husbands going to war, this war in the Middle East. But it was kind of a different thing. Tell us, give me a sense of what it was like, for instance, in the Korean War. So you are all marching off. Most of you were married?
Yeah, we were all married. All my brothers, except the youngest one, was married when we were all called back during the Korean War. The oldest brother, second oldest brother, and brother the doctor, we were all called back into during the Korean War.
So you'd all just gotten out. World War II basically ended.
Yeah.
Everybody came home, got married, had 1,000 kids.
Right.
And then this nonsense comes up in Korea. Why did why did the Korean War matter so much? Why so quickly after a World War, from your perspective, why did the Korean War matter so much that everybody that had come home and begun putting their lives back together left again?
Well, that's a hard question. I don't really know why the Korean War broke out. The only thing I know from a soldier, we weren't even actually, it wasn't actually called a war, and the people who lived in that time, it was called a police action. And we had a standard joke in the infantry, where's your badge? You know, if you're a policeman, where's your badge? It was just a standard joke, you know, and actually, when I came home, people thought I went to jail. And they asked me where was I? And I just looked at them, you know, because I got called back. And they actually thought maybe I went to jail or something. They didn't see me around.
Well, and of course we didn't have embedded journalists, did we? I mean, war used to be something that went on. Everyone supported it.
That's true. In World War II, it was like night and day between World War II and Korea, the Vietnam War, and now this war that we're in. It's like night and day. I mean, when in World War II, everybody supported the war. Everybody. Collecting paper, collecting tin cans, everybody. But in Korea, I don't think half the people in the United States knew we were in Korea.
What was the duration of the whole thing, soup to nuts?
Well, I think it lasted 2.5 years in Korea. But
and you were injured somewhat severely.
yeah, I got wounded in 1951. I was wounded. Matter of fact, the picture of that on that book was taken 3 weeks before I got wounded.
Let's see if we can, if our friends here at the studio can put the cover of the book up. The book is called Exchange of Warriors, and just as a quick program note here, this is Patti Pugliese Rentschler, and we're back on BCTV at Work at Wellness. Tonight we're interviewing 2 local authors with a first-time book. Mark Pugliese Jr. and his grandson, Kenny Dunlap, have written a remarkable book about the themes that still matter in our lives and have always mattered in our lives as Americans. Home, family, honor, friendship, camaraderie, family, and as always, the girl back home.